Hey, what's up, everyone? My name's Zack Olinger. In this podcast series, I talk about relationships. Now, I know, as a man, you may not want to talk about relationships, or you may even tell me that the relationship that you're in is already pretty good. But I'm going to invite you to consider this. Could you be a little bit more fulfilled in the relationship that you have? I would like to have you consider that there may be other ways to kind of see the conflicts that are truly just unnecessary that we all experience in a different light. And if you're open to receiving or just giving me a little bit of your time, then I look forward to my guests and I inspiring you to become a man that can have more freedom, less conflict, and more pleasure in their relationships. Thanks for joining me.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me on another episode of the Real Zack Olinger. Today, my guest is Deni Van, and she's going to talk to us about her marriage of 35 years, 36 years coming up next month. Congratulations. And specifically, she's going to talk about something that came up for them in their relationship about 13 to 15 years in. And I'll just let Deni start to speak to that. Deni, sorry. Thank you for being a guest. I apologize for mispronouncing that.
No worries. I'm the second oldest of 8 kids, so I even respond to "Hey you," so we're good. Yeah, absolutely. So, we got married in 1985, and it's usually about when the kids they were about 6 and 12 years old. I have 2 boys. It was around 2001. And I was at the top of my career. I looked very successful on the outside, and nationally certified, and I had government contracts and big tech contracts at the time in the early 2000s, right? Mm-hmm. So it looked very successful on the outside. But I was diagnosed in cancer on my 35th birthday, believe it or not.
Wow.
But this really puts quite the pressure cooker, on or any kind of relationship. And what I discovered was I didn't have a relationship with myself. So I made some choices at the time. I was being told, okay, we have to inject you with radioactive dye to determine if, how many lymph nodes we're going to remove, to determine if you're going to get chemo with your radiation. It's like, and the kids are 6 and 12, and we're about, I don't know, let's see, if Jimmy's 12, that means we're 14 years into our marriage. I said no to all of that. I said no to all of it. Mm-hmm. And of course they said, all right, if you don't follow the plan, you're going to be dead in 2 years. Mm. So my husband was like, what are you going to do? Because you got to do something. It's like, oh my gosh. And I realized I hadn't dealt with any of the trauma that I experienced from 4 to 16. None of it. I kept suppressing it. And now it's in my face going, all right, you're going to deal with this. You're going to be dead in 2 years. Mm. And so what I discovered was the relationship you have with yourself is so vital. The thoughts you have with yourself, how you treat yourself and take care of yourself, the food you put in your body, the water you drink, or the chemical drinks you drink, all of it has an effect on this first, and then the relationship. And I didn't have any kind of relationship with myself at the time. So that's where I started. And I became a course junkie, but at the time I was researching as a Reverend, teaching sacred texts to people who use nonverbal communication. Hmm. So body language, sign language, gestures, and sign languages. So, and at that time, I realized that the body communicates so much more than we realize. And as I began my journey of, okay, what am I going to do instead of that? I got to do something. I met Dr. Mercola. He became my doctor, and I learned neurokinesis techniques. He was teaching EFT at the time, emotional freedom technique. And I took all of his courses and his certification, but during the time I was also seeing someone who specialized in that and working on myself, applying the knowledge, this magnificent knowledge about this brain as an organ, energy, neurosystems part of us, that it is so intelligent that I began working with it. I became a licensed massage therapist, and I specialize in cranial sacral therapy. And of course, any therapy I do, I get myself. So I became the client first, and to apply these things to myself to see how they worked. And I realized I began working with women who also experienced trauma. I realized I was a walking head. I had nothing awareness what was going on in my body. And I was all in my head, all what I'm told what a relationship should be, and what I'm told what a relationship looks like. And what I wasn't doing was seeing my partner for who he was. And I couldn't see him for who he was because I didn't see myself for who I was. And so this is why I say, first and foremost, how's your relationship with yourself? And people come to me, my relationship, it's violent. You know, I work with women who experience domestic violence and worse. So they have within their nervous system all of the memories. So every decision we make from that point is thwarted. It's not clear. It's not coming from you. It's coming from the clogged up mechanisms within the neurosystems with the chemistry we create of fight or flight. When there's nothing to fight and there's nothing to flight, yet we're projectile vomiting on our partners, right? Because we haven't worked through this ourselves. And then we wonder why we break up with that relationship and realize the next relationship is the exact same thing. What I started to do was look at all of the things I loved about him and only focused on those things. Then I realized I was focusing on the things I loved about me. This is huge. And people, you know, our mind will say, that's stupid, it doesn't work. But this work that I do now, it's not for the mind, it's for our neurosystems. Because when we create a relationship, we're not only physically connected and mentally connected, we're energetically connected. So everything in our energy systems are shared. And when we create a space for the other to be authentic, for the other to process through their energy systems, whatever they need to process, and create space, never blaming. Because as soon as we blame, you're the reason for this, we are now the victim. Do we realize this? So this is why, you know, in a relationship, we start victim projectile vomiting on each other. But if we just take a moment and check in, if your doctor were to tell you, hey, look, you got 2 years, you got to figure this shit out. I don't know if swearing's allowed, but
Totally.
You got to figure this shit out now. You know, What are you going to do? People go in pure panic and fear mode. I did, but there was a voice inside of me when the doctor's going on, okay, this is going to be happening. This is going to be happening. And then over the next 5 years, this and this is going to be happening. And there was just this tiny little voice inside. And we tend to ignore it. Mm-hmm. You know, all those little red flags. I work with people who go through relationship issues. You know, were there red flags before you got married? Oh, yes. Okay. But there was this tiny little voice, and I had courage. It took courage. It took massive courage to not listen to all the fear-mongering planting seeds of I'd be dead in 2 years, to go, hold on, wait a second, let me just listen. You know what that voice said? That's not for you. But I had no idea what was. And I needed a partner who was going to support me and not tell me what he thought I should do. This is where it gets this line. You know, it's like, no, I think you should do this. And even supporting your partner, even if you disagree with their final decision. This is true relationship, because it's not about my, if he's going to make a choice, this is his choice. I'm here to support him 1000%. Not told you, see, I told you so, or you should have listened. None of that narcissistic behavior. So we create a space for relationship. And he's a great guy. He is a fantastic guy. And I wouldn't change a thing. And I would do it all over again.
That's awesome. There's so much in that resonates with me, with conversations that I've had over the last day or two and my own experiences. Like, I could go back and listen to that and probably pick out 25 things from like this, and we could go on these wild tangents, which is awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing all of that. I guess one of the first things that came up for me was, and I just don't want to forget, because there's probably 2 or 3 things that I for sure want to ask about. But the first thing I'll ask about is 100% agree with you that it starts within us, right? Like, I've heard this so many times after everybody I've interviewed. That's the thing they always talk about. Like, it starts within you. I had to choose, like, to start looking at myself. So that voice, I guess, like, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that that particular voice that you listened to, that came to you, had that happened before, or like what was it about it that kind of sparked you to follow that? Because I've been doing intuitive decision making for like the past, I don't know, 14, 15 years, and it takes a ton of courage. Like you said, there's so much. I speak about this in another podcast that I have, but yeah, that particular piece of it, and that is a huge thing. So I always applaud people when I hear them say that, because I'm like, most of us, like you said, ignore that. We kind of know it's there, we hear it, but then there's a million reasons that we have to like rationalize not listening to it. So I guess that's the first thing. Was it that voice that led you to like start looking at your relationship with yourself? Is that accurate?
Yeah, the voice. We have the thoughts in our head, that voice. Mm-hmm. This wasn't that at all. It didn't come from Deni's mind.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
This was more of a verbal punch in the gut from the inside out, where it was like everything in front of me in this reality, this 5 sensory reality, kind of slowed down, and I can go back and play it and replay it and reverse it and replay it. So I can go to that moment when I got that punch from the inside out and saying that right there is not for you. So I'm thinking, okay, then it starts going again. So there's this piece that I can just kind of go back to and go, all right, we need to talk. How can I find what is for me? And then I opened myself up, and literally, back when bookstores were actually open,
right.
I would be constantly bringing the kids to the bookstore because we would buy books all the time. And so I was hungry for knowledge, and I discovered Dr. Upledger and his discovery of the cranial sacral system and listening. So I began to listen from this inside out. And then I began to work on others. I've worked on hundreds of people in their cranial sacral system, resetting it and listening. And this listening doesn't come from our mind, because what comes from the mind is criticism about it, judgments about it, opinions about it, comparisons about it. Not that kind of listening, because I realized, okay, here comes the mind. Set it aside, put it in a box, put it up on a shelf, and listen with this nervous system, this intelligence that's beyond Deni's mind. And this is what took courage to go inside, because it's easy to tell anybody this stuff. But when you're facing, hey, you're going to be dead in 2 years, it takes a lot of courage to really listen to it.
Yeah, I found that to be truly inspiring, that you were like, I said no to all of this. Like, because I think a lot of people, like, yeah, you get told something like that. I can only imagine. I
should clarify. One thing I didn't say no to was removing the tumor.
Gotcha.
I did have the tumor removed. That's it.
That's it. Yeah. Gotcha. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure like I said, I can only imagine having somebody approach me with that information and like, yeah, like what, yeah, at that point you are definitely at a decision. You're at a crossroads, for sure. Um, so one thing that as you were going through all of that and describing that scenario in your life, was it made me curious about like your husband and him being like, well, what are you going to do? And like, how did he show up for you in that? Like, how did he respond to your choice? And like, what did that look like? In like kind of the context of your relationship? Because it just makes me curious, because I've been married, and so I know what it's like to have kids and be in that kind of a relationship. And you've got and I've been on the other side where I've made a decision for myself and I know how my partner responded. And I was just curious about that dynamic, if you don't mind speaking
Oh,
into that.
absolutely. And actually, there's a story behind the cancer story.
Okay.
At that time, when my kids were little, he was an over-the-road truck driver. And that was at the time, I don't know if you'll know about this, but they had those two-way pagers.
Mm-hmm.
So we were constantly texting each other while he was like overnight and stuff like that. But he was constantly gone. And so when the kids were little, I think I made a decision or something, and I couldn't get a hold of him. So I had to make some kind of decision. He didn't like it. So I said, and you say things that you just wish you can go back, take that back. I said, when you're over the road, I'm a single parent. I made the decision, and that's what I had to do at the time. And I could feel it crush him. It's like he's doing everything he can for our family. And it's just, I wasn't dealing with my shit, and I'm projectile vomiting on him. But he made the choice to completely switch careers. And at the time, he applied to be a professional commercial electrician. And he was accepted and was the oldest person accepted at the time, because at the time they had these age rules and everything. But he was accepted into the program. So he took a huge cut in pay. And so because of that, I increased my contract load because I'm an independent contractor. So I kind of balanced things out so he can make this career change. It was right at the beginning of this that I got the diagnosis of cancer.
Wow.
And so we were like, all of this stuff is happening. Wow. And so what he did is he approached the IBEW and told them what was happening, and they backdated our insurance and moved forward so I can start with treatment. And he started the program, and he was in a 5-year program. Mm-hmm. I was in a 5-year treatment with my oncologist without doing all the other stuff. I still saw my oncologist during that 5 years, and it was quite the ride. And we needed each other during that time because the intensive studying for commercial electrical licenses is very intensive. And so we supported each other during that time.
Wow. That's amazing. Like, yeah, that's a lot going on right there. And yeah, I guess it's just fascinating what comes up for me is that there was so much massive change going on like so many fronts. That would seem like that would be like a make or break type of situation for a lot of people. I feel like there's so many stresses present at one time and a lot of things clicking though to work out, but at the same time managing that like on both ends. And like, yeah, what I assume that that probably wasn't all like smooth for you guys while you were going through that. Like, but that's really cool that that you guys showed up and worked through
you
that.
Hit a very important word. Showed up. Mm-hmm. He showed up for me. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of people don't show up. Mm-hmm. Any kind of vibration of, ooh, that's just too much for me, I'm out of here. Mm-hmm. He showed up.
Yeah, I was going to say that has to be how he had to have appeared, because otherwise this whole thing would have totally, like, I imagine, fallen apart. Because like, yeah, I mean, yeah, I can only imagine what was going on your end and what, what you would have needed from your partner, and vice versa. I feel like you both showed up, you know. I mean, it's just, to me, an example, without getting to like a whole lot of details, is that you both decided to show up. And I guess
it creates a whole new level of relationship. And, you know, everybody talks about that 7-year mark. Well, we got through that. And then people talk about that 10-year mark. You know, we got through that. And then this is where your authenticity comes out in a relationship. All your fears come out in a relationship. And relationship, when I see somebody making it past 10 years, that takes courage. It takes courage to say, hey, honey, here's my biggest fear. And being supported and being there despite whatever's attached to it.
Right. Yeah, that's the vulnerability piece, it seems, right? Like you said, to allow yourself to expose that and to confront that and to just be vulnerable and just saying this is.
And to a guy's perspective, I learned from him, vulnerable is a vulgar word.
Yes, I believe for most men it is. This is actually an interesting piece because I spoke about this with my with Philip that I interviewed yesterday about vulnerability. And yeah, I believe most men have a large like there's some type of aversion to being vulnerable because we're taught or modeled and have it subconsciously ingrained in us that it is a weak thing to do. Whereas it's quite the opposite, because it takes so much courage and strength to be vulnerable and to allow yourself to be exposed. I know that word, like those things in gender, like the word exposure itself is kind of like, well, if you're in any type of competition or anything that's masculine and you're exposed, it's like, well, you don't want to do that. Like you're going to you could totally lose the whole thing. Like if you expose yourself, and it's like, that's the point of strength, is that you're willing to put that on the line. You're willing to lose it all. That's
to
where
gain
the strength,
it all.
to gain it all. Exactly. No risk, no glory, nothing ventured, nothing gained. That's the essence of the strength of putting it. Yeah, if you're going all in, you're going all in. That's the real strength of it, because you're
confronting your ideas and programming of what relationship is.
Yeah. It's allowing to step into that fear. Yeah. Beyond it. Yeah. And to be okay with it. So you're right. And then one of the things, the example I gave to Philip yesterday was my personal experience. When I learned that vulnerability was actually strength was when I was in college with, she wasn't my fiance at the time, but with my ex-wife, we were dating, and we had actually broken up, and we got back together. And I had been the one to initiate both of those things, the breakup, and then a few months later asking to come back together. And I remember I told her, I was like, I'm feeling pretty vulnerable, in this position, because I could totally be rejected. I knew where my heart was at the time, and all of that. And through that experience, through me coming to her and expressing my vulnerability, where I was at, opened the door and invited her, gave her permission to also express her vulnerability. And once we both realized that we were in the same space and we were both being vulnerable to each other, that created the intimacy. There was a very intimate connection in that experience. And that is what really showed me that vulnerability is a real strength. Because like you said, it was the willingness to risk it all to gain it all. And so, we got back together, but that really struck it for me, because I just like to put that back out there, because I know a lot of guys, they do, like you said, they don't see vulnerability as a strength. And in a relationship, especially, I think if we kind of get into the masculine feminine kind of idea, the feminine totally responds to a masculine energy when they're vulnerable, when they choose to not let their fear stop them. Because a woman or a feminine will recognize that. They know what it's like to be vulnerable. They understand fear. They understand what it takes to move through that. And I think as far as the feminine goes, there's a lot of situations that men aren't aware of that women walk through in their lives where they feel very vulnerable, and they have to live their life and totally be out in the world in spite of that fear. I think
sometimes
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And sometimes when I work with guys, and it's interesting, I market to women, but more than half my clientele are guys. But when I talk about vulnerability, there's this wall that goes up. So instead, what I do is I'm like, all right, they talk about this masculine and feminine thing. You're both. You're
Right.
masculine and feminine is basically just means positive and negative energy, but both of them need to be grounded.
Mm-hmm.
When you're ungrounded, you're going to have thoughts of, she's going to reject me.
Mm-hmm.
If I ask, I'm going to make myself vulnerable and she's going to turn me down. So why even bother? Right. So this makes you the victim of your own thoughts. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't even know what's going to happen. So what I do instead is they recognize where they're at. It's like, oh yeah, it is my thoughts. I'm projecting them on to reject me. So of course they're going to reject me. Right. So instead, I'm feeling like I could be rejected right now if I ask this person on a date or whatever, whatever that first step is. I'm feeling this right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here we open up a choice. You can go ahead and ask anyway or not.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've made the choice. You've recognized and felt it. I'm feeling vulnerable. Like if I do ask and go ahead, I could be rejected. This is where the courage is. This is where the choice is. But as soon as we say, oh no, they're going to reject me. How many guys say they're going to reject me? And then they do reject them
Mm-hmm.
or they don't even bother.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a closet geek stalker. I love geeks. Tom Skilling's my first geek. But anyway, my husband's a bit of a geek. And he had this shyness, like he wasn't good enough or I was out of his league kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he was projecting that out on me. And I felt it.
Mm-hmm.
I felt his painful shyness. And this is back, when we first met.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went up to him and I just asked him a question and opened him up to be vulnerable and ask me out. And he did. He did. So this is recognizing when the energy is opening and closing, feminine, opening, masculine.
Mm-hmm.
We all go through this, all nervous systems, no matter what gender you are.
Right.
We all go through this energetic movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great point to point out as well, because I know that I've worked with a couple of guys there where I mentioned that too. I was like, you've got both masculine and feminine. And I try to describe it to them in the beginning. They're like, I don't know if I've got any feminine energy. And I'm like, hey, you do, trust me. And then I'm able to like exemplify it for them and give them tangible things. They're kind of like, okay, but it goes back to that. It's so funny and somewhat frustrating sometimes what we're modeled and taught, how much easier, like how much better our lives would be if we were just made aware of this, and what I love too, there's this quote by somebody that I just ran across this week, and I'm gonna borrow this because I was in a program, and I'll give her credit for it. This woman, Julia, I love what she said. She goes, awareness can give us choice in the moment. And I'm like, I love that. I would love that, because for guys, that's really what I was just looking to do, is like, it's just take a moment and like consider it, like just decide to try to work with this idea, this perspective, and see what it does for you. Like there's no downside, and so like just a different level of awareness to choose differently, like in the moment. I just love that. So, yeah, exactly. When you speak of vulnerability or feminine energies to guys, I think there's just a lot of resistance most of the time, because like they feel all of a sudden like that's not a manly thing to do or have, or it's like, yeah, when you work with it, you're going to get a whole different experience of life, like your whole interaction, not only with yourself, but your relationships across the board are going to respond from an entirely different place. And I like the reminder for everybody that we do have both. Like you said, there's this balance, there's this fluctuation. I remember in another interview, I was speaking like and it happens in the moment by moment, because I can be in my masculine and then all of a sudden find myself in the feminine. And I've done that within the last 2 weeks. I can think of an example of like where I was totally fine, holding space. And then all of a sudden, like I experienced something and I just flipped over into like my feminine, where I needed to start expressing myself. And I did. And so the person on the opposite end, they had a flip and they started holding space for me. And then that exchange flipped again, and she called me into consciousness to like be like, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, and I didn't know I didn't know I was doing it, but that's how it works. Like you said, this opening and closing, it's the pulsation of life, man. You know, like
that is wonderful. That is wonderful. You experienced that, because I teach that it's not a mistake that we are called human beings. So the human part of us is the doer. The being part of us is this feminine holding space for the doer to do its thing. Yes. Without space, there's no doing. So we are both. And when you honor that and ground it, this is when you're the eye of the hurricane and all the chaos is just going on around you, and you're not attached to any of it. That's the being part of us. But the human part of us, Deni, a woman, a mother, a wife, all of these things that are part of this human experience are constantly changing, moving, never the same, never the same. And so even our relationship tomorrow morning, when I'm lucky enough, like today, he just got home from being gone a lot of this week. So he's home now, and everything after this gets pushed aside, and we spend time and we create space for each other. And this is vital. I like to call this inner space, we got to create it inside first. And I like to call this inner space a vital nutrient.
I like that. I like that a lot, because that's so true. Yeah, to create the space inside yourself. And then I love too that you guys intentionally create the time and the space like for each other. And the vital nutrient is true, because it's vital for your relationship and for your own well-being as well. So like vital is a great word, because it totally speaks to the life of the relationship. And
just like a plant, you got to give it nutrient, water, sunlight, darkness. Plants need darkness. Same thing with us as human beings. We have to give ourselves this space to experience why we're here. And relationship enhances whatever's going on inside you.
Yeah, that's great. When did you guys start to decide to do that practice? I'm just kind of curious, because I love it. I absolutely love it. And I spoke with another woman as well that they do the same thing. They have they set time, and even if it's a short amount of time or whatever, it's intentional, and it's part of their routine too. And so yeah, so I'm just curious how long you've been doing it, if you don't mind sharing.
We started doing that around our 20th anniversary. Gotcha. And we renewed, was it 25 years? 20 or 25 years. It's when we renewed our vows.
Okay. That's awesome. Yeah. And both of you, like, it wasn't just like your idea. I assume like the both of you like decided, like it wasn't something like, hey, I think this is a great idea. I'm curious how it came up as well, like for you in the relationship. Like, yeah,
we would reminisce and ask questions like, hey, would you do it over again? He's like, I'd do it over again tomorrow. And so we were going to Ireland, and he actually set it up where we had our vows renewed in a castle in Ireland.
Oh, awesome.
It was awesome. It was very romantic. He had me speechless, which is like never happens. So I was just like, and I became this, yeah, it was one of those moments.
That's awesome. That's that's so cool. I could feel that. It's so cool. Yeah. So then I guess like, let's go back to that piece though. Is it from that time of renewing your vows, was that just something that you both agreed to do? Like, we're going to create this space to like intentionally, like it was a joint kind of idea that was spawned from that. Is that basically what it was?
We actually did a hand fasting ceremony. Okay. So if you know anything about hand fasting, it's about a week to 10-day process. So we went through the whole process together and ended with the ceremony in the castle, renewing our vows.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. And then is it every day that you have space like for each other, or like that you decide to do that? Or is it just, I mean, it's just part of the habitual like being of the relationship, I assume?
Well, with his job right now, he's gone a lot during the week.
Oh, right.
So,
yeah, so he's not there every day.
Yes. And, we're very mindful of never leaving with a bad word or a bad taste in your mouth. And I have a family member about 10, 15 years ago. He lost his wife. She went on vacation with a couple of friends and she never came back. And he admitted that they had some nasty last words and he's just guilt-ridden.
I know.
So we just agreed, you know what, let's just, because we just don't know. We live in the Chicago area. Around here, you just don't know. I mean, you really just don't know. Right.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. That's even come up for me here recently too. And I think about that. From time to time. And it's exactly right. You just don't know. And so you had to leave any relationship, regardless if it's intimate or children or parents or whoever, if there's somebody that you love, like, yeah, just that's, to me, it's about being mindful and aware and intentional. And I know in the moment that can be, you can lose it. Like you can be like, but that's just a matter of time, right? Where it's just kind of like, you just be in the moment to be like, all right, look, like this is what I'm projecting or what I'm dealing or what I'm processing. Where am I actually at in the long run? Where's my core at? What would love do? Like what's...
Yes. Love is going to show you all your patterns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's fantastic. And I love it.
Yep. Yeah, very cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you sharing all of that. Enjoyed the whole thing. So thank you. Well, I guess, was there anything else you wanted to speak to about it or share with us or anything? Sorry.
Probably. I can talk forever. I really can.
I can too.
And I know we hit a little bit on awareness mm-hmm. about what's going on when you're within yourself mm-hmm. and how the other triggers things within you. Mm-hmm. And then communication. I'm seeing more and more relationships not communicating. Mm-hmm. We're more communicating on Facebook. I'll give you an example. Recently, one of my clients, he said, I found out I was divorced at the Christmas party. So this happened this past December.
Oh my gosh.
So, he was no communication whatsoever. So communicating not only what you need, your wants and your needs, and then being able to communicate them to the other, because the other is not going to automatically know it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. That's a good point that came up in another interview that I had with a woman who was on the cusp of getting a divorce. Is that it definitely came about like on both sides, we need to do that, right? We need to communicate our needs and our wants, what's coming up for us. And I think that's another vital thing to do is like, just have like a way to check in, and like have that space to do so without judgment and just like have both people come together. Cause you're not always going to know, and you won't know if it's not expressed. I know a lot of times, some of us, they should know, or like, they expect, the other person to just kind of get it or know. And it's like, your partner is dealing with their own stuff, and on the flip side, do you know everything they want you to know, or like what they, like what their needs and everything are? So like, yeah, I'm guilty of that too, is what I'm trying to say for sure. In my previous marriage, I definitely had some resentment around my ex-wife just not knowing, like she's just not paying attention, like after like 14 years, like how long do you need to know? Like how long do you need before like, and there was a whole lot of that kind of language for sure. But at the same time, did I take ownership of that? Did I express myself? No, not all the time. So who can I really be upset with, right? Like, well, so there's a whole lot of learning for me after my divorce, that's for sure. Like, so.
Yeah, and I'm learning, from marketing, most of us have a 6-second attention span, mm-hmm. and we need to hear things 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my husband, he's exhausted when he gets home.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to create a space for him to want to come home. Because when I was growing up, that was not the case.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a conscious choice not to repeat those behaviors, right? Not to repeat those cycles.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a conscious choice to make it so that he wants to come home and be in this space when he does come home, because he's exhausted. Right. So I'm not telling him all of these details because he's not going to remember them. So just being okay with where he's at. But once he gets some sleep, you better believe I'm going to tell him everything that went on this week.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Just being able to, and that comes to the awareness of like, I love that too. Like, understanding and being compassionate just about like, knowing that you can have that space with your husband. This just has to happen first, and you're okay with that, and understanding like his needs to satisfy your needs. And then that's reciprocated, like he then
create the space first.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I love hearing when couples work together to create and facilitate working systems, and like where they understand they have this awareness for each other and they show up, and it's just warming.
Show up.
Yeah.
Show up. And it takes courage to show up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
so congratulations to those who show up. Good on you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just a matter of like, I think too, like what are you committed to? I mean, there was a reason, if you're in a relationship, why you guys came together, and it's not that those reasons necessarily changed, and I'm definitely aware of like how time can create, I've started just recently calling it the Epcot Center of Resentment, right? Because like it's real subtle, it can be real subtle. You got these tiny little Lego pieces of one thing or another, like they just kind of start building on each other, and you can, because I did this with my ex, like where it got to a point where like kind of any type of movement anywhere I went or anything she did, it was just like it's just the way it felt, like there was no positive way out, you know what I mean?
Continuous microaggressions. So the mechanisms in your nervous system were looping and firing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And that's quite the state to be in.
Right. Yeah. So I just didn't have the awareness that I have now.
Yeah.
I'm not
it's saying, amazing, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. I'm not saying things would have turned out differently, but my life would have been, I think my quality of life would have been a lot better, especially post-divorce.
And this is why mentoring is so important, especially for our young guys, because I like to say they are attacking the family structure and the community structure. Mm-hmm. We don't have, our families are struggling, our communities are struggling. Mm-hmm. And this is the foundation mm-hmm. of relationship. And so as we get and heal and move forward, that's my goal.
For sure. It's definitely my goal too. I've got 2 young teenage sons where like relationships and entering into those types of, affairs in their life are going to come more and more into their ways of being in their life. And I was like, well, for sure, I want to like to close the gap on lessons that I've learned and like give them a better quality of life in their relationships. And at the same time, and probably it's equally as important, if not more important, I don't want their partners to suffer from an unconscious or less conscious like male partner, because there's no reason for us to suffer unnecessarily, so, and I don't want them or their partners to like suffer the stuff that I had to go through. So just, the awareness piece. And I agree, like young men is definitely a big piece of what I want to work with as well. And like, I've had the pleasure of working with over the last like 6 months is working with some of the younger men. And it's been really fun to kind of bring that stuff into their awareness. And they seem to be receptive to it. That's the other thing, is like the openness to receive is pretty key too. Because if you're not willing to receive the information, then there's not a whole lot. You can lead a horse to water. But I've been excited to see that a lot of young men have been open to receiving this information. So
that's fantastic. And you mentioned suffering real quick. Every seed, and We are a seed, right? So every seed has to push through the soil. That's the suffering. We all have to do our own pushing through. Because if we do it for, like, as parents, we want to do it for our children, right?
Right.
But when we do it for our children, we're actually thwarting them. Just like if you try and take out a caterpillar that's turned into a butterfly and you help it out, it can't fly. So we step back and let them make their mistakes and then be the support they need.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. I've totally, ever since my kids were super young, I was like, I'm going to invite you to fail for sure. I'm going to absolutely invite you to fail. Because that is how we learn and we grow. And at the same time, like I feel like, at least for me and my role to my children, is that it's part of my duty to be a guide for you. So like, I'm going to give you this framework. I'm going to give you these ideas. It's going to be up to you to like work with those or implement them or make them your own. My intent is to like have you like be further along than I was. You're still going to have some hiccups and mess it up or whatever, and that's fine. It's just like, here's some tools I didn't have and go build with that, And
even when you give them the tools, just like leading the horse to water, they just might not use it.
They may not use it.
My sons, I've got all kinds of great tools, but do my sons use them?
Totally.
That's mom's thing,
Yeah.
That's totally. I think we can talk forever.
I think so. Yeah. No. Well, I appreciate it, Deni. Thank you so much. Is there a place where people can find you, social media or website or anything?
Absolutely. I'm anywhere and everywhere on social media, Heartfelt Awakening.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you again so much for being a guest. I had a great time talking to you. And there's, like you said, there's so much that we can connect on and keep going down. So I appreciate the time and thank you for being a guest. Thanks for being on.
Keep being awesome.
Thank you. You as well.
All right. That wraps up today's episode of The Real Zack Olinger. Thanks again for listening. If you happen to find this episode insightful or valuable, I invite you to pass it along to somebody else, because chances are, if you found it valuable, they will too. If you're on Instagram, you can find me at The Real Zack Olinger. Until next time, everybody. Thanks for listening.